Hello class, my name is Charlie, but you can call me Mr. Williams. And today we're going to be learning about GMOs, genetically modified organisms. I'll be calling them GMOs for short. So, what is a GMO? A GMO is a genetically modified organism, and it is one organism that has been split, and you take a gene from another organism and put it into that one, and that's an unnatural organism or a genetically modified organism. So there's a lot of debate over genetically modified organisms, and the main debate over them, there are two ethical concerns. One is that it's not natural for genetically modified organisms to be made because they're not found in nature naturally, and the other is that consumers don't know whether or not they're consuming GMOs because the FDA in the US does not make it law to label a product if it's a GMO. So that means that people believe that GMOs are bad because you don't have to label them, and they think that you have to do that because GMOs are bad. But the real thing about GMOs is the only difference is one trait. For example, a tomato, the only difference between a genetically modified tomato and a regular one is that maybe they will take a gene from an Arctic fish, they'll take the frost tolerance gene from it and put it in a tomato, so when you're growing the crop of tomato, it will be resistant to frost and it'll be less likely to die to harsh weather conditions. So consumers don't see the benefits of genetically modified organisms, but the overall crop production is increased when using genetically modified organisms, which makes it so that the products consumers buy are cheaper than an actual organic product that will offer the same health benefits. And there actually are no health effects that are related to GMOs. There's nothing that will be detrimental to your health compared to natural organic products. There are actually some positive health effects, and in 2006 they actually developed a rice called golden rice, and it is supposed to be higher in vitamin A than regular rice. And the reason why this is important is because in third world countries they have a very low amount of vitamin A in their diets, and this leads to blindness, and many children go blind because of this lack of vitamin A in their diets, and golden rice can be a solution to that. The only issue was these third world countries didn't think that it was ethical to grow genetically modified organisms, so the golden rice project was actually disbanded, and they still have a lot of blindness in their country. So, hold on, let me get some water. So GMOs, the main thing that consumers get is that they increase the output of products so that you can buy your products for cheap. So the other benefits is that most genetically modified organisms compared to regular crops do not spoil as quickly. They're made to last a little longer. They're immune to pesticides, so that means farmers don't have to use as much Roundup or herbicides that destroy these pesticides. So this is actually better for the environment. And there are actually some genetically modified organisms that are being developed that can actually fixate their own nitrogen, and you need nitrogen in order for a crop to grow. And what farmers did before to get this nitrogen is they pumped natural gas into the soil, and this actually had two costs. One, natural gas has an effect on the environment in a negative way, and also there's a large distribution. It's really hard to distribute natural gas. So the moving trucks, they're emitting carbon when they're distributing these natural gas to farmers. So if a genetically modified organism can actually fixate its own nitrogen, it'll get rid of a lot of costs that go into producing organic crops. Also, genetically modified organisms need less soil, which is also just another added benefit of genetically modified organisms. So, do you guys have any questions so far? Yes, you sir.
Are there any technological advances in the field of GMOs currently that consumers would benefit from?
Yeah, there's actually a new study going on where they are actually developing a yeast that can be used to ferment wine, and it will make it so that wine will have more positive health effects, and actually that it will make it so that your hangovers are not as bad in the mornings. This is an interesting study that they're developing, and consumers will actually see it as a benefit, and it'll be a direct benefit, unlike a lower cost, which is more of an indirect benefit. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you think the FDA will mandate that all food products will have to have it labeled on them whether or not GMOs are included in the product?
It's a very good question. Well, so far, over 60 countries actually make it law to label your products as genetically modified organisms because there's been a lot of outrage over it. And the U.S., currently there are over 1 million signatures wanting to approve that. They want GMOs to be labeled. Like, there are many actual products out there. For example, one at the top of my head is Odwalla. They say GMO free, so more people are more inclined to buy that. But I think that the FDA will be forced to make it so that you have to label, because there's a poll done where 80% of Americans said that they would like to know whether or not they're consuming genetically modified organisms. And this goes back to the thought people don't really know what genetically modified organisms are. They believe that they're bad, negative, have negative health effects, they're just not natural, and that they believe that genetically modified organisms are inferior to natural organic products. And this is not true. There are definitely some reasons why you would buy organic products, but for the most part, genetically modified organisms are made to help the consumer benefit, help the farmer, they can produce more crop. And the real reason why people believe that genetically modified organisms are not the solution is because we still have hunger in this world, and the reason why is not because of food production. Our world produces enough food to feed the entire world population. The main issue is food distribution, and genetically modified organisms really have nothing to do with that. The main reason why food distribution is so difficult is because many people, especially in third world countries, live in rural areas, and it's hard to distribute the food to those areas. And also, many areas actually ban the production of genetically modified organisms. They're only allowed to grow organic crops. And actually, farmers have been sued for growing genetically modified organisms, even if they weren't intentionally growing them. If a genetically modified organism maybe ventures off from one farm and goes into another farm, that farmer can get in trouble for growing genetically modified organisms if there are laws intact that make it so that you're not allowed to grow them. So genetically modified organisms are improving the overall production of food, and they are not really the reason why hunger is still around. The real issue is distribution of food, and that has nothing to do with it. That could be possibly that people should start integrating vertical farming in their system, because that will allow them to distribute in urban centers more, and then rural areas won't have to ship their food out as frequently. And that concludes class. I hope you guys learned a little bit about genetically modified organisms. Tell your friends, they're not so bad after all. Enjoy.